I was sick and tired as a practitioner worker not having any tools to do my job. And it just dawned on me one day that if I can get the pattern of behavior by the perpetrator by getting a complete timeline picture, it'll give me a better understanding of why a survivor makes a choice to act in a certain way or not, inaction. The tattoo is this: how can I judge her choices if I don't first know all of the perpetrator's actions and behavior patterns and the impact it has on the 3 buckets? So I drew a timeline on my paper and I asked the survivor one day, I said, I have this tool that I would love to try and see if it's helpful to survivors. Would you be interested in using the tool with me? She grabbed it out of my hand and said yes. We sat on the carpet and she filled in her timeline as I asked her questions. It was amazing. After we were done, there's a huge timeline from the past all the way to the present. All of PBI, so the bottom bucket here is P plus P plus I equals harm and danger. Anytime she gave me a piece of information on the perpetrator's behavior and impact it had on her or her child or the household, I put it here, and I immediately asked her, can you tell me, was there anything you managed to do in the moment to be protective? She's like, yeah. She's like, I grabbed my son and I ran out of the house barefoot in a rainstorm down the street, screaming for help. So I put it on the top. So that's the S plus B plus I equals safety is survivor behavior impact. Now, the N. Who can guess what the N is for? N plus B plus I.
Network.
Network. We have to think in formulas. Because if I think in formulas and get all 3 pieces of the formula, I'm gonna have better documentation, right? And I'm gonna make better decisions with families. So network, anybody in your network do anything? What did they specifically do? And remember the I, tattoo it, remember the I. What kind of impact did that have on your child's safety? What kind of impact did that have on your ability to protect your child? And then we just run through the timeline. If we can fill in both the bottom and top section really well, then we'll know what to do next. And what needs to happen in the future? We need to assess for future cultural safety. We need to do circles of safety and support. We need to do really smart collaborative safe mapping, smart safety plans, right? Is what we need to do in the future. So this is the 3 questions. It's just in a timeline format. And workers who are in court really like the timeline because you can plot really specific dates on the timeline from past and presently of really major violent physical incidences. But I don't want us to forget that the timeline tool needs to capture day-to-day perpetrator behavior all day and online. And we have to look for what I call as windows and gaps in the timeline when there was no harm and danger present. Why would we want to look for windows of time when there was no harm or danger? Why do we want to peek into those windows?
Gives us access to future potential. Like what was going on at that time that safety was present? Could we duplicate it?
Absolutely.
What were the factors that were different? How can we redo them now? How can we duplicate them now?
Yep, absolutely. And it's another really nice visual tool that's going to give us a really rigorous balance assessment.
Yeah, and I'll just add, right, that we talk about this line, and above the line is protection, below the line was harm and danger. And we're really focused on harm and danger that was by the perpetrator's behavior, and then the acts of protection taken by the survivor and the network. It shows almost like call and response, right? When you get a sense of the reaction or the response to that behavior, you see this pattern of protection along the top, right, that was counteracting the pattern of harm and danger based on the PBI on the bottom. It's a great visual to guide how I would draft something for court or any of my documentation that really lays out very, very clearly, right, the ways in which the behaviors are protected. And when I'm applying all the tools at my disposal, I'm gonna get a much broader picture. So for example, assessing for future culture safety. If my personal bias is that I'm really wondering why this woman didn't call the police, And I learned from this whole process that the last 2 times that the police came out, one time they arrested her for a reaction to his behavior that was defensive, and another time, right, she found out that the chief of police was his best friend from high school. Do you see why that does not create cultural safety if now I'm requiring her, on behalf of the agency, to call the police when a threat presents itself again later? It starts to give more true math, 1 + 1 = 2. Given enough information, all behavior makes sense, right? And I think what happens sometimes is we aren't going down the rabbit holes and we're not assessing the why, right? There's oftentimes a why somebody chose this protected behavior over an alternate protected behavior that me, from my very limited lens in her life, might not understand.
I'll give a quick example.
Please,
before we
yeah.
continue. What she's saying is this, and I'm gonna ask you, the survivor says this: I'm there investigating intimate partner violence, and she tells me I went and got him more liquor that night. How many of you guys are worried about that and immediately your stomach was like, oh no, shouldn't have done that? How many of you are worried? Thank you for your honesty. Right?
Was she trying to put him to sleep?
You know it. So I asked, old social worker behavior. My bias is like, you shouldn't have done that. Not only did she do that, she left her 6-year-old child with her husband that had been under the influence to go get it. I had other people, shouldn't have done that. He's not safe. I was like, well, how do you know that? Does it go in the worry column? Does it go in the working well column? Or do you not know where it goes?
We need to know more.
Yeah, because you don't have I in the formula. You just have behavior. So I said, hey, I could assume why you maybe made that choice, but can you tell me your thoughts behind taking those actions that night, what you hoped that would achieve? And she said this: because last time he drove drunk with my daughter to go get it himself, and I don't want him to do that. So I went, and I said, wow, that sounds like the smartest decision you could make in the moment. And by the way, that's not fair, because your husband's also responsible for his child's safety.
And
Right?
he made a poor parenting
And he made the
decision.
poor parenting choice
Right.
to do that. And I said, and it's kind of amazing that you were able to put some protection in place around that. She started to cry. Then I didn't even have to ask her anything else. She said, and you know what, Luck? I also did it because I know exactly how many drinks to get in my husband. He will pass out and will not be violent towards me and my child. And we were physically safe that night.
Questions
So-
about that?
I go and I put that in the what's working well above the line, right? And not only did I capture what's really happening, I now have a partnership because I validated. That small validation,
Builds big trust.
a
in
huge
comparison.
amount of trust.
Yeah.
And then she wants to tell me more. I like this tool too because I've had survivors tell me, look, I didn't do anything. I don't do anything right. I haven't done anything to protect. I'm like, no, you have. And then we can show them, right? Heather, you've had that.
Absolutely. So the number one thing from this is worker partnering to organize the story. And the story isn't just from our point of view, it's from the direct source's point of view. The second thing is it's going to bring up contradictions maybe in our understanding of the situation. How many times have you read a file or somebody else's report and then we add that into the narrative? And then we can check it out and say, oh, in my blah, blah, blah report, it says XYZ happened on this date. And she's like, no, that's incorrect. This is what actually happened. And we have to be prepared to take in new information that contradict our case record or someone else's record that might not be accurate. So it's really critical that we're getting some clarity from this and that there's that trust level when this is now gonna go back and replace and update, right, that documentation. And it's something that's gonna give them a sense of security.
There's no names on here, it's confidential, but this is an example out of San Francisco. It's actually my last in-person demonstration of this as a facilitator before the pandemic hit. I was on site and the minor's attorney, the CFT facilitator, the mom's therapist, her mom was a survivor, and the worker wanted me to come and map because the worker said, I'm really struggling because the minor's attorney wants to permanently place the kids with grandma. Says the mother does nothing to be protective. So I said, okay, well, why don't you come prepared and ready, right, with all of the information that you already have on the timeline. I'll ask the questions, right, and everyone as a group will collectively be able to see the map. And so this was the second open case for these kiddos, by the way, for dad's behavior. Second open case. What pops in your mind immediately when I say that, the second time children have been removed?
Second dependency, right?
Yeah, but what pops in your mind?
Our intervention got affected.
What else are we gonna do? What haven't we already done?
Did anybody think trauma,
Yes.
like for children? Big time. And guess what? It's dad's behavior, not mom's.
Right.
But this is what happened, was so beautiful, was that all of the harm and danger was documented on the bottom, but look at the top. All of the protective acts, and we went ahead and sorted it and labeled it, protective acts and protective capacity. I wanna zoom in, if we can, Heather. The formulas are at the top and at the bottom. But all of the top part, Heather, if you could zoom in, all of the circles, or that right there, no, back a little bit. Yeah, right there. Look at all the people that mom went to. This man was severely abusing her and the kids, physically, strangulation, bruises. I think it was also sexual abuse. It was really horrible, horrible case. Look at all the people mom went to. She went to the maternal uncles for help. They confronted him physically and said that he needs to stop putting his hands on his sister and then all of those things. Went to the landlord, put bars on the windows. Went to her employer to tell the employer what she's experiencing for her husband. I don't know about you, but I definitely don't want to go to my employer and tell my employer what this horrible stuff I'm experiencing. It's so brave and courageous, isn't it?
Big time.
Her neighbors, her co-workers. He was stalking her at work and harassing the co-workers about what she's doing. People just coming and going. And they're blocking his access now. They're actually doing things to intervene with him too, these people. She went to her neighbors. She went to her therapist. She went to her church, the after school program, and every day went to the after school program begging them to get her kids off the wait list. Why do you think she was doing that?
So she'll have safety.
Why?
Safety gotta work.
Yeah, because she wants to keep them out of the home. It was amazing. I gotta tell you this before I pass it to Heather. 2 days from this mapping, they were supposed to have a CFTM. Guess what? Just mom and maternal grandmother were gonna be at the CFTM, and maternal grandmother has the kids placed with her, and they wanted to terminate the second services and permanently place. Just mom and maternal grandmother. Why do you think they canceled it?
They needed the rest of the network.
That's right. They were like, wait a minute. We need to go get the pastor. We need to get the after school people. We need to get the neighbors. We need to get the employers, co-workers,
Uncles.
the uncles. No, they did. They canceled it. I flew back to San Diego. They went and got everybody. And everybody plays a really solid role in developing safety planning to intervene with the perpetrators, who we ended up getting the kids back to mom. We relocated her. Everyone plays a really strong role in intervening with PEI. Everybody's on the same. It was just amazing, right? So I'm thinking, but what if we did that the first time?
Yeah.
So it makes me think of what you're talking about, Yasmin. It was like, what if our intervention, that's what you said, looked like this? I want to know, what do you think could happen if our intervention started looking like this?
We wouldn't see them again.
Hopefully.
I mean, ultimately,
Maybe.
we want to see
Reduce
them
the
again, and ultimately, we want the kids to be safe.
I mean,
Until they're old enough, 18, to keep themselves safe, right? That's ultimately what we want.
At
We
least
don't want to see them again.
when we traumatize the child.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Something in the second thing.
And maybe, well, I'll just leave it at that.
and I want to show another example of Heather's, because this one's like super duper amazing. And I've had something similar. Look at this one.
This was presented at a conference in Australia, when they were, really trying to help people understand some of the cases are pretty extreme. The level of violence, the length of time, the patterns run through all the tributaries, right? And in this particular case, all the documentation was victim blaming mom when dad was really savvy. He was highly educated, high income, very intelligent, and the abuse was torture and kidnapping and very serious over a lengthy period of time. And the case straddled 2 states because mom tried to get away. And then the case opened, and everywhere she went, he would find her and follow her. It made national news and attention because he wanted to use the government, right, to literally bury her. That there was going to be no chance that her perspective would be believed, would be heard, or valued. And child safety's documentation continued to perpetuate the narrative. And so there was a brand new worker. She'd been on the job for 3 months. She was inheriting this case. Her supervisor was also at the same time inheriting this case. And there was something in her gut that said something's not right. And so they introduced the timeline tool in a training, and they were like, let's try it. So they did this with mom in her home and papered the walls of mom's entire place, the hallways, the bedrooms, the living room, right? And mapped out over 7 years of their relationship and how all of this had happened, and all these windows into the times when there was protection, and all the times in which the information was completely conflicting within probation's case record, within our case record, et cetera, et cetera. And so that was incredibly powerful for that mom to finally get justice, get her kids back, and to present. When our workforce is focused on, I don't have time, look what's at risk, right?
You don't have time to not have time,
Yeah,
is what I say.
yeah, you don't.
In these situations,
There's
right?
too much at stake. If we truly espouse a value of best interest of children and families, this is the work we should be doing, rather than some of the other things that we seem to require within our systems. And so part of implementation of something like this is really slowing down and saying, we ask staff to juggle a lot of balls in the air. How do we take some balls out of the air rather than asking staff to become better jugglers? And I think that's at every layer of the organization. And so one case at a time, right, with a little bit of a consultation or expertise, getting a coach, right? A domestic violence or IPV advocate, somebody who's gonna give some value add with the nuances can really go a really long way in being able to correctly capture the story, really get a balanced opinion of how the actions of protection have been demonstrated over time. They just looked a little different than from our lens we might have expected them to be.
It really speaks to lethality too.
It
Like,
does.
it really does. Like, no reasonable
Dangerous
person
guy.
can do a better job, you know?
Yeah.
And I think for me, what I would do is like, this writes my report. So it's really easier for me to document and in my contacts and write reports if I'm already structuring and organizing my interviews this way. And so these are the fundamentals that if we can really get skillful and build and massage and work those fundamentals, then it should cut down our time and make more efficient use of our time. And the timeline can be used in ER, like I told you I did in the, just in the house with the young lady. It can be used as consultation tool. I've used it with the perpetrator himself. I've also used it with 2 parents together that had got to a place, right, where they were ready then to like kind of reunify as a family, right? And we get really creative with these tools, but if we don't have tools, then we're gonna just be spinning all over the place. And I never felt comfortable with my decisions, right? But if I can lean on some of the tools that are at my fingertips, right, then I'm gonna be able to make better decisions with the family.
The other big thing is this takes away the point in time right? Where I'm making decisions out of context. And this puts all the context in one place where I can go, oh, right, the workers who had this case previously, after seeing this, got the bird's eye view, right? And when you zoom out and you see it through, oh my gosh, and everybody has the aha moments of where we had a miss, where we didn't slow down enough to get a rigorous and balanced assessment and really understand, because SDM was considered unsafe and very high risk in that case. And they were not also attending to the cultural dynamics with the situation, where you have an Aboriginal mom and a white partner with a lot of power and privilege.
It makes the survivor definitely more vulnerable in those
Yeah.
situations, right? I really like what you said, Heather, about it opens all of our eyes, because in my situation, I had the attorneys for the kids and the therapist literally thanking me, right, for just showing that, right? Because they couldn't see the therapist actually, because you talked about, I gotta community partners, and that they need the training and they need the practice, right?